Well, thank you very much. The first minute of this is going to be a training film for firefighters and police officers. It'll be about 60 seconds. And then we'll have a training in for emergency managers. And if you can bear with me for that minute, then we'll have get into some interesting stuff. Okay, a 60-second nuclear detonation training for first responders. This is all firefighters need to get through a nuclear attack the first 72 hours. Drop and cover when you see a flash. Stay down behind cover for 2 full minutes. Even covering with a newspaper can prevent burns. Keep eyes closed during bright light to prevent blindness. 7-10 rule. Fallout loses 90% of its radioactivity in the first 7 hours after a detonation, and an additional 90% for every 7-fold increase in time. 90% in the first 7 hours, 99% in 49 hours, 2 days, and 99.9% in 2 weeks. Fallout looks like sand, ash, or grit as it falls and accumulates on the ground. If no fallout is visible on the ground, there is no radiation. To be sure, place a piece of white paper, a dinner plate, or anything with a smooth surface on the ground and check every 15 minutes for fallout particles. If visual indications of fallout appear, take shelter for 2 or 3 days underground or behind thick walls. These tips are generally true. This may be the only nuclear training you get if you're a first responder. Knowing A, B, and C, where I've just said, can protect your life and your department. Give a card to each emergency responder with this information. It's on the internet. It's called 60-second nuclear detonation training for first responders. These principles were developed during the nuclear weapons tests from the 1940s and 1960s and remain valid today. The laws of physics do not change, and this card was actually developed by Utah State Emergency Management Office. Pat Bursey did the final edit on this card, and I have permission to quote them as the people behind this. Now, that's the first, if you're a firefighter, police officer, EMS, that's your training for nuclear. Now, the training for emergency managers is even shorter. It's about 5 seconds. If you're an emergency manager, all you have to do to be trained for nuclear is think about what you would do if it happened. Boom, you're done. There you go. All right, now I can start. Anyway, so my talk is about saving the remnant, and I ran into Edward Teller one day, at one of these meetings, and I had just read a biography of him, and I was quite intimidated, and I mentioned to him that I had read a biography, and he said, "Who wrote it?" And I'm like, I didn't know. I never look at that, and and all I could remember was that he used, and best I could remember was he used 4 bags of tea or 4 bags of sugar in his coffee. And I wasn't about to get in a polemic with the smartest man in the world. And I said, well, the book had said you use 4 bags of sugar in your coffee. And he said, no, I use 8. And so that was my chance to have a conversation with the smartest man in the world. But now that he's passed on, what I would really like to say to him, and this is, I'm going to talk about this here. This is a real Bible here from the 18th century. Somebody complained here about we don't talk about God enough, and so I'm going to mention God in my talk. But here, this is Nuclear War Survival Skills is considered the Bible of our Bible for Civil Defense Bible. This was created by the U.S. Department of Energy. Those are the people that deal with the nuclear bombs and everything. And in it, in the foreword, this is where I want to take issue with Edward Teller again. He's not here to refute me, but so I'm taking advantage of the fact that he's not here. Okay, in his foreword, he writes a whole page, but he says, if we go no further than what we can do on the basis of this book, then the United States cannot survive a major nuclear war. And I want to take issue with Dr. Teller on that, and I say that's not true. because they did not have the internet then. Now everybody has this book, Bible, the Civil Defense Bible, at the click of a mouse. Everybody has it. And we're talking about saving the remnant, okay? And right now, a lot of you look like you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember it, so I built a fallout shelter during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I was really disappointed that my father didn't do anything. You know, he didn't. I didn't understand why he didn't make a shelter for the family, and I resolved when I grew up I was going to make the best bomb shelter you could make, and I did. You know, I made that one you see in the out in the parking lot there. I made a miniature version of that. Mine is a 6,000-gallon tank, and I buried it in the backyard 35 years ago. And I remember trying to move that tank in the back of my driveway. I tied a chain to the apricot tree in the backyard, and you know, one of those chain things you crank and you pull it, and finally the apricot tree came out of the ground. And so I rented a giant forklift and moved it to the backyard. My wife cried when she saw it, you know, and all the neighbors were like, "Oh, what's that?" But anyways, I did, and about 6 years ago, the Discovery Channel did a piece on it, and you can see that a couple of times a month they're featuring my shelter now for the last 6 years, and it's too bad that it's me, because I don't have a reputation of having all my marbles. I identify with a guy that was, there's a story, when I was in Colombia, there was a lunatic asylum down the road from where I was staying, and the story went that there was a guy, he had a flat tire, and he was changing his tire right by, within, by the sidewalk, and the lunatic asylum was right there, and there was a guy watching him out the window, one of the lunatics. And so he's got all the lug nuts off, and he trips, and all the lug nuts go down the sewer. And so the guy's at a loss, and then the lunatic says, "Well, why don't you pull a lug nut off of each one of the other wheels, and then you can put your wheel on?" And the guy says, "Oh, wow, that's great." And the lunatic says, "I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid," you know. And that's, that's how I feel, I'm a house painter. I've been painting houses for 42 years, and so I'm in competition. My wife's a pharmacist, and she said, "Don't you dare say triage, The word is not triage. You're talking to a bunch of physicians, and they're going to think you're an idiot. And it's triage, it's triage." So I got that clear. So that one of the things that what I wanted to do, before I get too far into this, a lot of you here are old enough to remember that there's a saying, "There's no atheists in foxholes." You don't hear that anymore, but I grew up with that, and it's true. There was no atheists in foxholes, and my friend and I, on the way down here, we went to the Atomic Museum in Las Vegas, and they have a room there. It's built like a bunker, and it's a 10-minute show, and they set off a nuke, and the room shakes, and you're supposed to be experiencing what it's like to actually, witness a nuke going off. And anyways, the point of that is that, like I say, that when a nuke goes off, really, if you're not a believer, you're going to be, because it's, that's really our only hope, because right now is a spiritual one, because the government has done nothing. We're on the edge of World War III, Most of us remember, some of us remember the Korean War here, and I actually I was a toddler then, but I actually do remember it. We grew up in a lot of wars, and we may not be around for the next one, which could happen any day now. But that is really the only the spiritual. I brought the Bible here because it really comes down to a spiritual solution. I remember when I was lost at sea. I was on a raft searching. I was 14 years old, and the current caught me, and I was it was a whiteout, and I didn't know where I was, and I was panicking, and I said, God, please save me. If you save me, I'll believe, I promised God I would believe if he saved me. And no sooner did I say that than a fishing boat appeared out of the fog about 50 feet, 50 yards from me. And I was like embarrassed because, I'm like, I'm cool. And which way is shore, And that's what I said. And they pointed which way shore was, and I paddled to shore. And I thought, well, so much for my deal with God. That was a coincidence, Anyways, but yeah, and so I've had enough experiences like that well, I survived an accident miraculously, and I was an atheist. And I remember it was so miraculous that I survived, and I survived unhurt too. I remember I was 19 years old and proud that I was an atheist. I remember looking up at the sky and shaking my fist saying, God, I am not going to believe in you. And that ruined it for me, because I realized, not only did I realize there's God, deep down I could no longer not admit that God exists. But at that time I had no intention of following, being anything. And but still, but that really is, unfortunately, where we are today. That there's now, as far as the remnant goes, is the reason Jane picked that talk for me. I made a list of things that I thought I could talk about, and because I believe it's true, if there's a nuclear attack now, that Wayne LeBaron, he used to do the nuclear, he worked on the nuclear tests, and when they vented in Nevada, the fallout would go over Utah because they didn't want it to go over Las Vegas or Los Angeles. They waited till it was blown over Utah because there's only about 8,000 people in St. George. And he found that there was, he said they expected to find dead people, but because they were inside, that saved their lives, and that fallout danger's overrated. But Wayne LeBaron went on to write a book about, his book is Preparedness for Nuclear Disaster, and his thesis, his assumption, basic assumption is the cities will not survive, okay? Urban America will not survive a nuclear attack, so it's pointless to, do preparations for urban America. Rural America will. And there is a lot of rural America out there, and just because you might live in the city doesn't mean you won't survive, but you can, if you know how to deal with the attack, you know how to get out of the city. And you won't be able to drive your car, and all you have, maybe, if you're lucky, is a bicycle, all right? And this bicycle, this rig was, the technique, Kirk Paradise of Huntsville, Madison County Emergency Management, did the bike, like he did this, I forget who said how to do it, but the Kirk Paradise was the last guy, and he should get the credit for this technique. The bike has no pedals. You take the pedals off, and you take the seat off, and where the seat is, there's a pole here. And you're going to walk it. You're not going to try and ride it. And you can load this bike with several hundred pounds. This is only like a kid's bike, practically, 24-inch wheels. And you can, all this is hanging off the pole. And the Vietnamese, apparently they used bicycles down the Ho Chi Minh Trail to defeat our forces. they carry 500 pounds on a bicycle. But this is how you would walk out of the city, with a bike. You would use bicycles. You wouldn't try and drive because the roads would be packed like they were in Houston when they had the hurricane and people died in just waiting in the traffic jam. So how much time do I have? Okay, in 35 minutes. So I'm going to give you some tips about what I found. I've ridden I bicycled across the country four times, in my life. The last time was 6 years ago. Well, I actually completed it 2 years. I did it in 2. But because I didn't go on the freeways, I got to see rural America. I got to know the other America. And I remember one time, I was in Duncan, Arizona, which is on the border of Arizona and New Mexico. It's way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's New Year's Day. And the nice thing about first responders is, we were going around giving out civil defense kits to all the emergency managers in Arizona. But it was New Year's Day, and they're always on duty. There's always somebody, any time of the day or night. So there's always somebody there. So that was really great. So it's New Year's Day, and we talked to the battalion chief, and we were saying that, we're showing him the nuclear attack kit that we had back then. And he was saying that they wanted a nuclear war, They were looking forward to it, get rid of the cities, and their laws that were interfering with their lives in the countryside. He was serious too, That's his feeling. And and another time, this was on another trip across the country. I spent about 4 hours in one small town showing them how to use these meters here. These. They had a bunch of meters, and and they were really talking about the fact that there are two Americas, and the people in rural America are very resourceful. They're poor, generally poor, but they're able to live on practically nothing. So, and I remember Art Robinson had talked about in his book, the little book he has out there. I forget the name of it. I'm using it under the kickstand. It's Fighting Chance. All right. So that there would be salvage in the cities, and he talks about how it would take 4 years to recover from a nuclear war, and people think that that's the end of the world, and so I think it's worthwhile for me to explain to you some things that you can do that will ensure that your survival. But and one of the things is in the Intermountain West, I'm going to recommend the Mormon Church. You don't have to be a Mormon to go to the Mormon Church. In fact, I was raised Episcopalian, and in the summer I spent 6 months working back east, and I go to the Episcopal Church. And growing up, they said the Episcopal Church is the one church that won't interfere with your religion or your life. So, and in other parts of the year, I live in Salt Lake City, and I go to the Mormon Church. And what I'm going to say about the Mormon Church is that they're like a government in itself. If the government collapsed, you would want to know your Mormon neighbors. Because they have a structure, and I don't know, maybe the Seventh-day Adventists do, but throughout the Intermountain West, there's a lot of Mormons, and if the government disappeared, there would still be a government there. So that's why, I'm recommending that you affiliate with the church or get to know them if they're around. They used to supply. When we joined the church in '76. They encouraged everybody to have a year's supply of food, and how to do that. It was like 400 pounds of wheat, and, so much powder, a couple of bags of powdered milk, and 60 pounds of honey. And, how are you going to eat that stuff? And so we raised our kids we'd grind the wheat, and we made bread, this whole wheat bread, and it was like bricks, you know. And my kids still complain about having to eat that. But, and, you know, you got to learn how to eat that, because you can't just eat it right away, because it's really hard on your system. So it's good to practice, you know. If you buy some wheat, get a wheat grinder and start grinding your own wheat and make your own bread. You know, it's cheaper than what you buy at the store. But anyways, so we did that. And but the other thing too, that Toshkano was here, and he talked about his father. And he talked about, I was in Japan for a few weeks, and I got to visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Toshkano was supposedly one of the last living survivors within the ground of unsurvivability. And I would say I went into one building in Hiroshima, and I didn't know, you know, you see that wreck of a building, they show that ruin, and you know, that building was built in 1915, and it was really bad construction. And so you know, somebody could have tripped on it and knocked a window out or something. It was really bad. There was another building there that they don't show, and it looks like a new modern building built in 1929, right under the fireball. There was 30 people in the building, and one guy was in the basement goofing off smoking a cigarette, you know. And when the nuke went off, everybody upstairs died. But the guy in the basement, he survived, and he lived to be in his 80s. And that, so I realized that the nuclear, what they say about the nuclear blast, it's highly overrated. And this was what Wayne LeBaron said about the fallout danger. It's overrated. You know, it doesn't mean if you stand in front of a Mack truck, you're not going to get killed. But, you know, you step out of the way if you see it coming at you. And it's the same principle with these nuclear stuff. And anyways, so what I wanted to mention was that his father, because he was wearing white cotton, 100% cotton underwear, that his clothes burned off, but the white underwear did not, and it saved his life. That and it saved other people's lives too. That and I thought you had to have white clothes on your outside, but if you have white 100% cotton underwear, that will protect you from a thermal pulse of a nuclear bomb. And you know, it's easy to find white 100% cotton undershirts, but finding underwear that's, you know, you actually want a longer underwear, maybe down to your knees. The only place that I know you can get that is the Mormons, you know. And you can find them, and they won't sell it to you if you're not a Mormon, but you can find a Mormon that'll buy it for you, you know, and it's not expensive. And it can, yeah, 100% cotton, and it goes down to your knees, and you know, if you just get in the habit of wearing that it can save your life. And if you're in a, you know, a close in, you know, the thermal pulse hits you. And also, you know, airplanes, you know, some people will wear cotton clothing when they fly on airplanes because it gives them an edge. If there's a fire, it won't melt to your skin. If you're wearing synthetics, you know, and also that's an advantage of wearing 100% cotton underwear. And, you know, yeah, that's, and it seems like, oh, that's, you know, it seems silly maybe, but, you know, nowadays, you know, if you're thinking these things, if they're automatic, you know, that, so, you know, you see a flash. We had to exercise with my kids when they were little. We turned the light on, everybody would hit the floor, you know. It's just, you know, they make fun of duck and cover, but the man who was in charge of this project, Nuclear War Survival Skills, Dr. Conrad Chester, he pulled me aside one day, and he was here, and he said, you know, it's a shame that they make fun of duck and cover, because that alone would prevent millions of casualties. And actually, it would reduce if people understood duck and cover, we call it drop and cover. We get the duck out of it, you know, because, you know, people make fun of it. And that, you know, they say, what good will it do? No good if you're under it, but if you're 5 miles away, when the windows fly, you know, everything goes horizontal, it'll save your life. And new technology, of course, is, this is old technology, and this is a new technology here. And actually, this can replace this. And this is through the project of Physicians for Civil Defense. We worked with the Department of Defense on this. Usually they pay people what we do with this. The government pays people to do what we do, but they didn't, you know, they really didn't care, or they're ambivalent. Didn't put this out. We took this to all the, every office in Congress, and we were offered a meeting with President Bush, you know, and we've been to so many offices, and they said, we can get you a meeting with President Bush, but he can't do anything. And we felt like, you know, we don't want to, what's the point, you know? That's all they do in Congress is they have meetings, you know, and more meetings. And so, but people said, well, you should have had that meeting with President Bush, because then you could have said that you had a meeting with President Bush. But I said, no, we can say we turned down a meeting with President Bush. So there, you know, anyways. Now, the point is, okay, this system here, because of this technology, where it's basically, it turns colors. Most of you are familiar with this. It turns colors instantly in dangerous radiation, and it's a safe, not safe device. Thank you, Governor Ridge. He worked with us on this. A format that was, because the government, the lab that did it under government supervision had so many, you know, standards and things they had to, you know, meet, that they created an unreadable product. You know, unless you're a health physicist or you know, educated that way, it's really not useful. This one, there's no radiation detector out there that an 8-year-old can look at and understand, and that's what they can do with this. And you can make this a fraction of the size. You cut out the sensor and the reference, and you can, you know, stick it on your ID, on a driver's license, and you know, so first responders don't want another card to carry around in their wallet, and that's the beauty of this. It's thin, it's easy to cut out and tape to something, but you might want it in your wallet. So this is 1,000 times cheaper than this. I mean, this, in other words, this makes a national radiological program, National Radiological Defense, 1,000 times cheaper. And we now have 150,000 of these, or actually 160,000. And we have an envelope, we're calling it an envelope project. We're hand addressing, there's 18,000 volunteer fire departments in the country. The paid departments won't take this because they're paid, you know, and they have protocols, and, you know, they got to have permission, and, you know, that's partly why the cities won't survive too. But the volunteer fire departments, they love free stuff, and they'll take them, and so what we're doing is we're hand addressing envelopes. We've done it in a couple of states. We did it in Nebraska, because there's only like, I think there's 250 fire departments in Nebraska. And but so we hand address the envelope, and we put a stamp on it, so it's personal. So when the fire department gets it, they're not going to toss it. It'll have a cover letter, and then also we'll call the fire, you know, we'll give them a phone call, and you know, somebody always answers. It's their answer machine. Nobody answers their phone anymore, but nevertheless, just leaving them a phone message that it's coming, and what it is, you know, short phone message. And so our target is we feel like we have enough resources to cover 9,000 volunteer fire departments in the country here within the next month. You know, there's a couple of us are going to be working here after this for the rest of the month. And we'll be addressing envelopes, and it will need 18,000. We'll be sending out 18,000 of these, 2 to each department. It would be nice to, we don't really have the resources to do all 18,000. You know, and we do have a lot of, I would say, you know, the next Fukushima happens, you know, we're going to have a lot of money because, you know, we got hundreds of thousands of or 150,000 meters, and they sell for $35 a piece. Do the math, you know. I mean, they sell just overnight when that stuff happens. But it doesn't help us now. So if anybody wants to, you know, we're in a position where we don't need donations. We need loans, you know. I mean, we have the ability to pay back. We just, you know, we actually have, you know, we're quite well funded in the sense of what we have in inventory, you know, extremely well funded. But, you know, it's until they start selling, and then we're in a kind of a double bind. Is we have enough meters for all the volunteer fire departments in the country, but we don't have enough, you know, money to buy all the stamps and you know pay for the meters. I'm donating a bunch of these, but I can only donate so many. There's investors that have invested money in it. Years ago at Robinson said that people are going to get tired, the volunteers would get tired, you know, and we needed to make civil defense pay for itself. And we actually created KI4U. That's Shane Connor's business. We helped him get going and started, and so that's really the business end of civil defense in America. That's Art Robinson, and he's going to be getting a couple thousand of these. He's going to, you know, refurbish and still get them out there, but at the same time, he's a main distributor for these meters, and so that really, you know, it's. Everybody remembers the Three Little Pigs, you know. They don't tell kids those stories anymore, but, you know, the straw house, the stick house, and the brick house, you know. And that's where we are right now. So we could have something could, you know, they're talking potential nuclear war all the time in the news. And so it's good to, you know, prepare. And I think it's good if you make sure you see the shelter out there, you know. That's amazing. A lot of work went into getting there, and it might inspire you to make your own, you know. If it's amazing how little work. Chris and Kearney showed how to do a 15-minute shelter in your basement. Yeah, every basement is a natural fallout shelter, even a house, you know, without a basement. That you can put a table over, you know, a loaded table, not so it collapses, but just in a corner in the center of the house or a corner of your basement. And that can double or triple or quadruple the protection factor of your basement or your house. Like, say that your basement has an average protection factor of 10 to 40. That means you get 1/10 or 1/40 of the radiation in the basement as what's outside. You make that shelter in 10, 15 minutes, and it doubles it. Instead of 10 to 40, it'll be 20 to 80, you know. And that, how much time do I have left? 20 minutes. Okay, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, you know. Yeah, good. So, and I am there. Okay, so we're giving out free ones of these. Well, this is this is not the Geiger counter. This is a survey meeting, but the Geiger counters are free, and they're worth $100. You know, I mean that's a freebie. You know, and we can. You can test it. If you're going to be here tomorrow, go out and buy some batteries. And, you know, it takes 5 size D batteries. And you make sure yours works. If it doesn't work, then we'll give you one that does work. We do have some batteries here, but it's better if you just get your own. So, and let's see, I got my notes here, and at this point, I would say that if you have any questions, you can interrupt me if you have questions, and I'll go on. And again, focusing on the remnant, and we know that we've had experience with police and firefighters, and what you can do in your own town is you can make sure they have the 60-second nuclear detonation training. You can go, have these printed up, give them to your police officers and your firefighters. It took me 9 years to get the Salt Lake City Police Department on board with this, and then they changed the chief, and I have to start over again. But big paid departments. I worked with some of them a lot of years, but they do come through. They're hard to do, and it would be very discouraging if you approach them. They'll push you right away. Whereas if you go to the volunteer departments, they'll thank you and appreciate what you're doing. So, but if everybody here would take the message, to their local police and firefighters, and like I say, the way they pick emergency managers now, unfortunately, they don't come up through the ranks of like firefighters or police officers. They take a good administrator, someone who's a good administrator and can sit in the office and write grants, which is opposite of what they need to do. But and so emergency managers, they don't have a clue about radiation, and the problem is they don't know who to ask. They don't teach this stuff in schools anymore, and so they don't know who to ask. You go up the chain of command, and nobody knows anything, and that's that's a problem. And like I say, that's why you get your best response from the volunteers. And now the other thing too is we do have some products out there. That this is a Kearney fallout meter here, and this is actually the best meter that you can buy now. Even though, Crescent Kearney says, well, you really want to get something like this, spend, in his day, he said spend $300. Now it's $700, a decent meter is $700. But there aren't any, There's a few out there. Nobody's got big inventories. And the fact is there just aren't any to speak of. If everybody tried to buy them here, you'd have a hard time. So we have, there's about 7,000 of these meters that we have. They're factory-made Kearney fallout meters, and they're good forever. And the retail's $400 now, and they're on sale for $279. And I talked a guy into investing a fortune in them, and he's still waiting to sell them. And it's lucky he hasn't sued me or had me assassinated, but we become best friends over the years. But this, we thought we were making a toy, or just, a little better than the Kearney homemade Kearney fallout meter kit, but it turned out that this is, Dr. Conrad Chester said the accuracy on this, they found that a well-made meter like this has an accuracy of plus or minus 10%. These have the accuracy of plus or minus 25%, and these are fail-safe. You can never get a false low. These can give you a false low. These can say it's safe when it's not. These give you a false high. A false high won't kill you, but a false low can. And plus, anybody can make these. The instructions are in the Nuclear War Survival Skills Manual. They're on the internet. We sell kits. We have kits for them. And the kits, the kits go for, equipping firefighters and first responders. It doesn't pay for the cruises I go on with my wife that I haven't been on for 10 years now or something? I don't know. Anyways, yeah, this has been my life's work, and I guess I'm 72 now, and I don't, and those of us that are older know we don't have a lot of time. We don't have another 40 years to be dinking around with this stuff. And so we need to get this stuff to the younger people, especially now that they're open to it. And so I want to take some questions here. Does anybody have any questions? I got some standing ovation back there.
Steve, as before, thank you for a great talk. My question is, how do we reach children? With what material, for example? And how do we get into where the children are?
That's
I figured you could figure that out just standing on your
well,
feet
we
there.
we homeschooled our kids. I have 11, so yeah.
So you're not an expert in that, huh?
But yeah, no, I think the recent, I've tried to work with the emergency management in the state of Utah. It's in charge of schools, trying to get this into schools, and it's hard. That's like who's going to bell the cat, of course they made fun of the duck and cover thing. Those films, I think those are ideal for kids, the little turtle and, the little jingle that goes with it. That's what we were taught, and all of us here were taught in elementary school, most of us. I hope you're showing everybody here that I'm talking to a group, and the responses I get is like, oh, everybody's so old there, and I talked years ago, and I saw that there's like 10,000 views on one of my talks. Barbara, sorry.
I see. Are you still using your children as slaves? I mean, like helping to build the little meters and so forth. I was thinking what we need to do, if any of them have good handwriting, why don't we donate some stamp money and envelope money for you here so that you can do a few thousand from your children.
Oh, well, my children
are they out of the house now? They grown?
My oldest is 47, my youngest is 28. So
yeah, so they're out of the house. How about grandchildren then?
Yeah, grandchildren, yeah, that's, yeah, I got a few of those.
And if they're not all woke, like my one who's a goth, my great-grandchild, but other than that, most of them have potential. They just haven't realized it yet. But this is really worthwhile. And you know what? Our country, our president, our fraudulent one, but he's poking Putin in the eye all the time now. They're really poking him in the eye, and we're sending over bombs that aren't even good bombs, the dirty bombs, I think, right now, because they are out of ammunition in Ukraine. There's so much going on now, and this country is being abrasive. We are being, involved in something that's really none of our business, except they want to hide the labs. But things are tougher now, and maybe there's some people that are realizing it, that, we are probably closer to a confrontation, a nuclear one, than we've been in many, many years. And I remember back, like you remember, when we thought about using an abandoned mine hole. It was a Spanish mine down on the border, Mexican border, for a fallout shelter. We thought of that, because our well was there too. It was covered. So, with boards down below. I never went down there, but I think if under duress, I could have gone with the children. So, things are kind of bad again, and I think it's not a bad time. I have my little cards sitting around. And I really think that, I don't think I want to get a bicycle because I couldn't walk out of town anymore. But I really feel like the preparedness is a good idea, and knowing where in your house is the safest place. And you make so many good points. And I think right now we are on a precipice. And unless government changes here, and we're all locally in Green Valley, we old people who all walk the same way. It's kind of like the wobble, the aged wobble. But I mean, nevertheless, people are activists now, and we are being active and trying to get better representatives in the state legislature and better representatives in the county. Pima County, frankly, is a cesspool, and city of Tucson is a septic tank. I think that's more modern, isn't it? I mean, out in the country, we never had the sewer system down where I lived in Arivaca. But, you know, things are bad now, and I really think people do need to be somewhat prepared, even as you say, to find the safest place in your house. Think about it. Maybe have a gallon of water there, and just wait out a few hours if the worst should happen. You know, and and that's a good Mormon thing, be prepared, and that's a good Boy Scout thing, be prepared.
Yeah, excellent, yes. That's, I say yes to all that, you know.
Good afternoon. I'm one of those atomic. Oh, I got it.
Can you hold it?
Okay. I'm one of those atomic soldiers. I worked on atomic bombs when we were willing to have everybody believe that they were going to use them. It didn't make much sense. And that's one of the reasons I got out of the military, is because I didn't want to die with anybody that are a lot of strangers. I would rather be with my my people. And I had one of those, and I don't know what happened to it, but it's, you say you have some of those to distribute.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we got some
I
free
do
ones.
have a brother-in-law back in Pennsylvania. He's a Gutschall, and he's got the volunteer fireman thing named after him. So I could probably maybe get him interested in it.
Yeah, we can give you some meters for
And
them.
that would be the only way you're going to get this done, is if you have somebody that knows somebody else. And there's no doubt about it. If you're not prepared, it's too late. You can't do it afterwards. That's absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
Because you would be like a squirrel down in a basement getting out of the radiation. And there's just no way of doing it afterwards. It's got to be done before.
That's right.
And I noticed one of the things, they're so concerned about all this here CO2 and stuff. But back in Pennsylvania, there is more trees than have been there since colonial times. If they ever have a drought and get a fire, they're going to lose whole cities, whole maybe counties. It's going to be unbelievable. And there'll be no way they can do a thing about it. And people don't plan ahead. They don't really see the problem. There was a time back there a few years ago, they were worried about this one little butterfly. It only ate it only ate one kind of flower, but there were these flowers were along the side,
Yeah.
but now they're all gone. They've wiped out all the weeds,
Yeah.
and it'll never come back. So what can we do? We just gotta see it coming and fix the problems before we get there. So I'd like some information so that I can get, if I find anybody that needs this stuff, I can have it, tell you where you could send some.
Yeah, we'll give you some. Yeah.
I have another question, short suggestion. Are you familiar with Pam Popper, who's working on Parallel Society? You may not be. So here's what you and anybody here needs to know. She's an attorney in Ohio. She sued the state for the lockdowns. She didn't say constitutional, that doesn't work in court. She said, show me an emergency, and she won. She's now working on some training medical people, but she's also working on Parallel Society, which is like in Czechoslovakia during World War II, where people got out of the banking system, they made friends with their farmers, so they didn't work. Anyway, I'm thinking they and you might be good allies.
Yeah.
Glad to introduce you. I'll talk to you later.
Good.
But
Thank you. For sure.
I was just in Ukraine, and we had 4 air raids in Kiev while I was there. And the Ukrainians just carry on. They do the business. They don't let this faze them at all. And the business of the city goes on, and nobody panics. In contrast, people may remember here Washington, D.C., I don't know, maybe now it's 20 years ago, but it still sticks out in my mind. There was a man and his son went around with a rifle randomly killing one person a day from a distance. And the whole city shut down. People wouldn't deliver groceries to the grocery stores anymore because they were afraid that they could be killed by this one guy with a rifle. Okay? Now, you have a country there that is being attacked from several sides, being bombed. People are carrying on. We've got this city where one person with a rifle is going around doing something, and we panic. Now, there's more to surviving a war than having the Geiger counters. You got to avoid social breakdown. That if you have social breakdown, people start killing each other to rob the food from each other, and we would do more damage to ourselves than the enemy does to us. How, you know, if you really want to have a country that is resilient to defend itself when it's under attack, it's not just a technical matter. It's a question of restoring a moral fiber. How can we do that?
Well, I would say that I don't mean join the Mormons, but affiliate with them. You know, you know. Yeah.